also relying on Tracy Caloris, who is our Community Development Director. She's here with us today as well. A little agenda so that we know where we're going with this information session. We're going to do some brief introductions and we'll go over the background of NCORE and CDBG-DR. We'll talk to you a little bit about Haywood County. We'll hear from David Francis, the Economic Development Director, and his title is longer than that. I'll let him share his full title with you if he would like to do that in a few minutes. Talk about the program details about the Affordable Housing Development Fund specific to Haywood County. We'll have William Kinney to share with us some resources about the USDA Department of Agriculture resources that may help you if you're interested in working on this program. And then we'll go over our letter of interest and application process that Haywood County will be using. Some additional regulatory requirements, because as most of you know, housing and urban development doesn't give out money without strings attached to it. So we'll talk about some of the strings and red tape, and then we'll take questions from you that you may have as you're looking at putting proposals together for the application period that's coming up next year. I've already introduced myself and Tracy Caloris and David Francis as well, but our contact information is here should you need to get in touch with any of us. And just to let you guys know, we are not actually on the evaluation panel, which makes us great points of contact. If you have specific questions, you can reach out to us at any time, and we can help you work through that. We can do technical assistance for specific projects, talk you through some things that you may be wondering, are they eligible? Are they applicable to this program? So we can provide that type of specific resource and technical assistance on some project ideas that you might have. There are also additional program staff with NCORE. We have several housing opportunities specialists, including James Bell, Emily Hagstrom, and LaShonda Oliver. We also have Alicia Curry that's working as a housing opportunities analyst with our department, and they are valuable resources that are working with NCORE as well that may be beneficial to you. Amanda Stapleton is our compliance director, so she is able to help with all things regulatory compliance. And then we also have Patricia Cantrell and Hannah White that are working with Haywood County that can also be good resources. So just to talk a little bit about the North Carolina Office of Recovery and Resiliency, as many of you probably know at this point, Governor Cooper established this office under the Department of Public Safety in the aftermath of Hurricane Florence. So North Carolina had just been through Hurricane Matthew and then was hit with Hurricane Florence. And it was intended to streamline disaster recovery programs statewide and help communities rebuild both smarter and stronger. And our office administers many programs, including the Homeowner Recovery Program, the Affordable Housing Programs, which is what we are majorly responsible for, Infrastructure Program, Strategic Buyout, and other programs as well. You can learn more about our agency on the website that's listed there. Here's a little bit about our mission, but essentially we're trying to assist storm and flood survivors in establishing safe and resilient home environment, which is not specific just to people that have been displaced by the storm. It also includes local governments. It includes communities that have been devastated by these storms in years past, which may be devastated by storms in the future as well. Our primary funding source is coming from the U.S. Department of Housing and Community Development. This is a department at HUD, so we'll refer to it as HUD. And it's through the Community Development Block Grant Disaster Recovery. So when you hear us say CDBG-DR, that's what we're talking about. The DR is for disaster recovery. And these funds have come to our agency, and we have subgranted them to Haywood County to help with recovery after Tropical Storm Fred. This just shows kind of in image form who is involved in the distribution of funds. So here you can see that the money comes from HUD down to DPS through NCORE to Haywood County. Lots of bureaucratic layers that we have to go through sometimes, but Haywood County is the one in this program who's going to be selecting projects that meet their criteria that they want to use to help with that disaster recovery and building affordable housing in Haywood County. And then I should mention, because of this call, that the subcontractors are obviously the ones that help them do that, right? They could not do this work by themselves. We could not do it by ourselves without using contractors, architects, engineers, and all types of construction labor to get these jobs done. With that being said, I would like to turn it over to David Francis so they can that he can talk about Haywood County a little bit. David?
Thank you, Michelle. Appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. Very excited to have this kickoff meeting, and thank you, Michelle and Tracy and Alicia, for all their hard work over the last year since Haywood County was awarded this grant. It means a lot to us to be working with such community-minded partners as the folks are at NCORE. It's been a trying times, as we, getting out of COVID, and then, we get hit with the floods in August of 21. And that's, when you have, these, back-to-back disasters, and you find out who your friends are really quick when things like this, happen. And it's been a pleasure to work with NCORE, and as we move this project forward to where we have, the involvement in getting the actual, houses built and things happening, is an exciting time for the county, and I'm happy to be a part of it. My team, Patricia Cantrell and Hannah White here in Haywood County, also been very instrumental in helping us move this project forward. But for those of you who don't know Haywood County, we're one of the most beautiful spots in all of North Carolina. We've got more mountain ranges over 6,000 feet than any place east of the Rockies, and we're one of the 12, 13 places in the world that all the water flows out of here, not through here. So we're, just an ideal place for outdoor recreation, a great place to come and relax. But so the part of that, having the water all flow this, created one of the problems that we're dealing with the our flood issues, and we're still working. We're almost daily. We're still working on flood recovery. Working with the town of Canton in a lot of aspects, the town of Clyde as well, as we move through these things. But you mentioned COVID. We were all bracing for a retraction and subtraction of how our economy would look after COVID. And that's one of the things that happened there. It was an opposite. We set sales tax records in June of 24, followed up with another sales tax record in December, 20, not 24, and then again in December of 2020. And since that time, our tourism has taken off through the roof. We've grown about 100% in tourism. And then one of the things that started happening, another unanticipated consequence after that, is our housing market, which was already, on the rise, and it was significant on the rise, just went off into it, skyrocketed. See from the slide here in 22, our median sales price was $350,000. In August of this year, this is $399,000, a 14% increase. The North Carolina median's 366, so we're significantly above that. And the U.S. median, we're just a hair below that. Twice in 22, our housing market went above the national average. So now, with we're also seeing less inventory, which is creating another squeeze on the prices. The prices are going up even further. Haywood, and there's only numbers I'm familiar with, Haywood, Buncombe, and Henderson, are not following the national trends where, house prices are starting to come down in the state and in the nation. We're still, having about 2.6% overall compared to those two different metrics. And you can see our sales price in August 396, 444,000 in August 23, and a 12% increase there. As I mentioned, the tourism, our short-term rental market has just exploded after COVID. In October of 18, we had 920 rentals. September 22, 1,700, and now another 63 rentals have come on the market there. That those would have been available rental units, for people to rent, but a lot of people are taking those available units and making short-term rentals out of there. So we're getting squeezed from all sides, and we get some pressure from Buncombe County to the east because their houses are cheaper here in Haywood than in Buncombe County. And we also have a large proportion of workers that work at Harris, the largest employer in Western North Carolina now. So Haywood County is kind of stuck in the middle between those things, and it's really pushed our house prices up. So this is, much needed program, and I appreciate your all's interest in this. And if we have any questions that we can answer, as you saw, there's a slide in there. Feel free to reach out and contact us anytime you need to. Thank you much, Michelle.
Thanks, David. We appreciate you setting the stage for what the current situation looks like in Haywood County. Obviously, a lot of challenges to work through, but a lot of opportunities as well. We're going to move on and talk about national objectives. This is more HUD regulation. Because of the type of funding that we're using, the CDBG-DR funds, we have to meet specific national objectives. And the national objective that has to be met with this particular program is benefiting low and moderate income persons, which is up to 80% of the area median income, which is just, a way to put statistically kind of parameters around the people's income structure and who might be most in need for the types of activities, including housing. How does this program help disaster recovery? So this particular program is allowing for locally driven solutions. So people can come to the table with, has to be an eligible activity, which we'll talk about in a minute, but to make their own locally designed solutions to that problem, creating long-term affordable homeownership and rental housing for those low and moderate income populations in North Carolina's most impacted and distressed areas, which in Haywood County, because it was specific, the damage was specific from Tropical Storm Fred to Haywood County. There are specific areas in the county, but we've been allowed to take Haywood County as a whole for that most impacted and distressed area here. It pursues opportunities for multifamily and single-family housing rehabilitation and new construction outside of the 100-year floodplain, which is an important component of the types of activities that we are doing. Because we're trying to build resilient housing, and if you're building housing back in the floodplain, what's likely to happen in the future with water tables rising and more storm events, you're looking at the possibility of flooding housing that you've just built for resiliency and disaster recovery. In regard to eligibility basics, soliciting projects from different types of organizations, whether they're public, private, or nonprofit, but you can see the list of qualified organizations there. You can have partnerships between those different types of organizations to come up with projects that involve eligible activities as listed there below the eligible applicants. So the types of activities we're looking for are acquiring, rehabilitating, and reselling single-family housing for long-term homeownership affordability, developing new long-term affordable homeownership housing, acquiring and converting existing multifamily for affordable rental housing, acquiring and rehabilitating existing multifamily units, or developing new long-term affordable rental housing. So you can see the majority of the activities are balanced under single-family homeownership development and multifamily housing. Either of those targets are eligible under this program. The activities do still have to target low and moderate income households, however, to be eligible. Ineligible costs, because people want to know what they can't spend the money on as well as they want to know what they can spend it on. We cannot use these funds, and Haywood County cannot use these funds to support supportive services. We can't fund supportive services, even though we know that they're necessary for a lot of programs. Infrastructure that does not result in the production of housing. INCOR has funded several infrastructure projects, but they were not in, it's a whole separate program, basically, that doesn't produce housing. So it's just allowable with CDBG-DR funds, but just not under this grant program. Mixed use projects where a portion of the new development contains non-housing components, pre-application costs and application development costs. Advances, we can't do advances because this is a reimbursement-based grant. And facility operating or maintenance expenses or offsite improvements, because it has to be tied to the site where the housing is being constructed. So a little bit of details about the awards that will be issued from Haywood County to their subgrantees. The maximum award structure is intended to be at a maximum of $3.5 million per project, and then it must represent the gap needed to finish funding the project. So if you need only $2.5 million to fund your gap, then the award would not be $3.5 million. It would be limited to $2.5 million. The award amounts can vary, but we'll need to see the sources and uses, and the committee that will be evaluating the proposals will also use that as determining the competitive nature of the application and seeing the budget, the sources, the uses, where's the other money coming from, how much leverage is there going to be in the funds that are being asked of Haywood County, that sort of thing. We must do a duplication of benefit analysis and an environmental review. Those are all HUD requirements that have to be done before any contingencies can be removed from award notices. So when awards are made on the proposals, it will be a contingent award until those additional steps can be, signed off on and removed before you will receive a notice to proceed and be able to move forward with the projects and actually spending the funds that can be reimbursed with CDBG-DR dollars. We issue a subrecipient agreement for the people or the agencies that we're working with. In this case, it's Haywood County. So we have a subrecipient agreement with them that tells them what they have to do to be in compliance with our award. And then their partners will follow the agreements that they have with Haywood County once the award structures are made and put into place. Okay, this is a sample timeline, and so far we've managed to stay on time. So hopefully we can continue to stick with that. We were able to make the press release when the county commissioners agreed to the subrecipient agreement, the amendment to the subrecipient agreement that we had with Haywood County. And we made the decision with Haywood County to go ahead and put out the information about the funds that will be available in the near future so that people had time to think about what type of projects would be best suited and how they might bring their basically best projects to the table to be competitive for this funding and make sure that there were viable and competitive projects that could be applying for these funds. And we know it takes time to get all the sources and uses lined up, to figure out where the land is going to be, to make all those types of decisions, get your partners in place, and that sort of thing. So we wanted to give everybody as much of an opportunity as possible to get those things sorted before the letter of interest process started and before applications would become due. So hopefully this is enough of a head start before that process gets up and going, that really good projects can be put together and submitted to Haywood County. We're having the info session today, November 1st. We will also be having another information session in December. That date is to be determined. We're working on that right now. And just to let you know that there will be heavily more information about nuts and bolts details for the single family homeownership development at that next info session. So if you're looking for more details and wanting to make a single family homeownership development project, or that's what you think you'd be interested in, please stay tuned. I'm happy to share the information on that upcoming meeting as to the list of attendees today when we have that in hand. The letter of interest period will be January 15th through March 1st, and those will be due at 5 p.m. on March 1st to make sure that everybody can receive information about having all that they need submitted in their letter of interest before the applications go live. There will be an application TA session in mid-April sometime. We'll also be choosing that date in the near future once we have calendars finalized for that part of the year. And then the application submission deadline will be May 1st, 2024. I think that's also a 5 p.m. deadline as well. And you can see based on the structure here that we're trying to make sure that people have that responsiveness. They have the component parts that they need to be able to do this in a timely manner. There's never enough time to get funding together to make project proposals happen. We understand that, but hopefully it's enough time to give you guys as much of a run at it as you possibly can have. The technical assistance session in April will be specific to how to fill out the application. We'll show actual pages from the application and what it'll look like. And just a reminder, I think there may be an additional slide about this, but the letters of interest are a required part of the application process. So you do have to submit a letter of interest in order to be eligible to submit an application. However, we know that some people will submit letters of interest that may not be able to finalize an application, and that's okay. We just have to have the letter of interest in order to move forward to the application procedure. And then award announcements are anticipated from Haywood County on July 15th of 2024. There's a typo there. So those the award announcements are anticipated for the middle of July, hopefully just after the 4th of July holiday. Okay, before we go on and talk a little bit more about regulatory requirements, I want to provide Mr. William Kenny the opportunity to talk about some resources that may be beneficial to you from the U.S. Department of Agriculture. Mr. Kenny.
Hey, thank you. Thank you so much, Michelle. I want to thank Tracy and Michelle for the invitation to speak with you guys today. As mentioned, my name is William Kenny. I'm the program director for our single family housing program within USDA Rural Development here in North Carolina. As you know, our goal is to provide affordable housing to the rural citizens of North Carolina. So that's our main mission and our goal. Here at USDA Rural Development, we have two main mortgage programs. You can go to the next slide, Tracy. Yeah. We have two main mortgage programs that we do offer. The first is our guaranteed home loan program. Applications for this program goes to lenders, approved lenders that are approved to participate in our program. USDA offers up to 90% loan note guarantee to lenders in order for them to reduce their risk. And extending 100% financing to eligible rural home buyers. Here in Haywood County, as an example, 1 to 4 person household, their household income cannot exceed $110,650 for this particular program. As you'll see later on, that deals with higher income individuals that are more what we consider moderate income situations. The term of these loans are 30 years. The interest rate is market rate, and that's negotiated with the lender. And the lender actually holds the mortgage in these situations. Our second program, and I guess the program that's probably more well known by local staff here, is our direct loan program, and it's commonly known as our Section 502 loan program. We make the loans directly to our applicants for this program, and our applications are processed in our local office by our local office staff. The office that handles Haywood County is located in Spruce Pine, so we have staff there. I don't know if you guys may know Jody Lovelace. He's the area director responsible for probably 19, 20 counties up in the western part of the state. So he will be your main contact for any of our programs. This program has different benefits from our guaranteed loan program. Our current interest rate with this program is 4.5%. The term of this mortgage is 33 years. In certain circumstances, it could go up to 38 years. There's no down payment, and loans can be made up to 100% of the value of the home. However, we do have what we call maximum loan limits for this particular program. For Haywood County, our loan amount cannot exceed $377,600 as far as the maximum loan that we could lend. For this program, as with the guaranteed loan program, we do have income requirements that we have to adhere to. For Haywood County, a family from 1 to 4, their household income cannot exceed $60,000. Okay. Because this program is designed for more rural areas, we cannot go into an area or a population that has a population more than 35,000. Okay, for Haywood County, the entire county is eligible for this program with us. You can go to the next slide here. Another program that we offer that is pretty much rarely used for us, though, we have what we call our site development loan program. This program is designed to assist public and private nonprofit organizations to provide suitable housing sites for housing. Okay, you can acquire and develop land into these suitable housing sites. Funds can be used to do roads, curb and gutter, connect to utilities, things of that nature. Since this program is rarely used, we're still working on some of our requirements and regulations for this particular program. The term of this, normally on average, we do loans in the amount of about 500,000. We just did one about 1.2 million not too long ago. The loan terms, however, is 2 years. We're still working on that because the debt service on that loan is based on the sale of those lots. As you sell the lots, then you pay the debt service on the loan back. In certain situations, we're trying to expand that because we understand when a group or organization borrows, 500,000 or $1 million, depending on the number of sites they have, it could be difficult over that period of time to actually flesh out those sites and get those sites ready to be sold. So those are some of the programs that we have. The current interest rate, before I go on that particular loan, is 4.5%. So those are some of the options that we have available to us as we try to assist you in developing projects in your area to be able to provide affordable single-family housing. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you guys for the opportunity to share that information with you.
Thank you so much, William. I mean, listening to the interest rates that they're able to use, you can see how it could be very beneficial to partner with USDA on some of the loan products that they have available. We've certainly learned a lot about them over the last several months for things that they have available that could be beneficial for some of our other programs as well. So just be mindful that those programs exist and that they may be beneficial to help when you're trying to pull together that capital stack.
Thanks.
Okay, so the technical support, we just wanted to provide information about where you can find additional information outside of this information session. So these are live links that will be available, and this presentation will be available on our website at NCORE, and it will be available on the Haywood County website as well. So you can see links for both of those websites here that you should be able to click in the presentation, which I can send out to the list of attendees after the presentation is over. I will just tell you, because technology doesn't always do what you want it to do, if you did not get a direct invitation from me, but got your invitation to this meeting forwarded to someone else, or you click the link on our website because you found it and were interested, if you send me your email after the presentation, then that will assure that I have it when I send out the distribution list. So I'm expecting to get a list of all the attendee emails from Teams as soon as this meeting is over. However, everything with technology doesn't always work exactly the way we want it to. So my email address is tammy.wiggins@ncdps.gov. So Tammy, TAMMY.wiggins@ncdps.gov. I'll put that in the chat in just a minute as well. If you want to send me that email, I'm happy to get contact information for you that way as well. And then we have a sample developer agreement as one piece of information that we can share under our resources tab. Thanks, Tracy. Also, the manual for the program is available from there. There's a section already on the website about the letter of interest process. Additional information will be made available about the applications when the time comes as well. The application itself is not readily available because of the letter of interest process. And in the past, when we have helped with these programs, we do get sometimes applications from people that are not eligible for the program and are not trying to do anything remotely eligible under the list of activities. Okay, so how to apply, we've talked about this a little bit already, but essentially you have to do both components, right? You have to submit a letter of interest by the deadline, and that 5 o'clock is important so that the staff can get the information in and ready to go for the application period. And then once you submit that letter of interest, you will receive the information to fill out a complete application. Because of the committee structure that is being used to evaluate the proposals, applications will be paper applications for this process. So for those of you that are familiar with applying to RFP processes where you turn in the binder and the copies and all of that, it's going to feel very familiar to you because it will run in a similar structure so that the evaluation panel will have the materials they need literally at their fingertips to review your proposals in a timely manner. All right, for the letter of interest process, and again, this is from January 15th forward. It lists the information that you're going to want to include in your letter of interest. Letters of interest are not intended to be applications. You're not being asked for all that information. It's basically just providing enough information that the person assessing eligibility, baseline eligibility, can see is the application or the idea that you're trying to submit for application, is it an eligible activity? Are you in an area that would be covered by the Haywood grant? We see all kinds of crazy things. People submitting a project for Transylvania County for money that's only specific to Haywood County, that sort of thing. So the letter of interest process helps weed out people that wouldn't meet those requirements. You can see the list of other basic information here. I won't read that to you, but obviously, budget, project location, anticipated project location. We've had the question in the past, what if we end up changing project locations? Add the LOI process. You might not have that ready yet, and we understand that. So that might be subject to change. Just put the information as up to date as you have it when you submit the application. Patricia, do you want to give a little wave to everyone since we have your name listed here? Patricia Cantrell's working with Haywood County, and she is the one that's going to be receiving those letters of interest initially, helping confirm initial eligibility and helping distribute the application information to those agencies that are eligible to do so. So thanks for helping with that, Patricia. You can see that Patricia's subject line we have listed there is very specific for a reason. That's just so that it doesn't get lost in the shuffle, because these are not the only emails she'll be probably receiving on the day that these are due. We don't want to miss any inadvertently. Just to kind of prep people for the application process, this is the type of information that you're going to need for the application, just so you have that, what type of information you're going to need to pull together if you're going to want to be, if you want to be successful for this process. So any agreements that you have with development partners, proof of procurement actions, there is regulation around how you procure the agencies that you're working with, right? SAM.gov registration, if anybody's not familiar with that, feel free to ask me a question offline. We can talk about that in further detail, but SAM.gov is essentially the overarching process that replaces the previous DUNS number. You might also hear reference of a UEI number, and those replace the DUNS numbers as well through the SAM.gov portal. Any letters of support that you might have from community agencies or municipalities where you might be working. I want to make a specific note here that we're not expecting people to have support letters from Haywood County, because Haywood County is the decision maker here. You can see how that would get complex very quickly if some of the projects had support letters from Haywood County and some of them did not. So if you have something like that from prior project life, then that's one thing. But once we've started this process, Haywood County is not going to be issuing letters of support for these projects for this fund, because they will be helping make the decision about which projects will be funded. But that doesn't stop the municipal, township governments from submitting letters of support for any projects, or community organizations, nonprofits, that sort of thing. Having documentation about the need for the project and how the project ties to the need, capacity documentation, including financial capacity, and we've done this type of work before, capacity, any of that information will be very beneficial. One of the other things that's listed on the websites is a list of evaluation criteria, so that is really what you're looking for and what you need to respond to have a competitive application. So we always post that information as soon as possible. So it actually is already available on our website now. Drawing, site plans, renderings, if those have already been worked up for the project at hand, project budgets and pro formas, unit mixes for rental projects, neighborhood layout and market analysis for homeownership projects. There's a note here about the Home and Housing Trust Fund homeownership sales prices for homeownership and the high home rents for rentals. There are limitations on exactly how much apartments can be rented for, homes can be sold for, because of the government overlay of these projects. So just be mindful that there are restrictions on certain component parts, and there are restrictions on the developer fee and contractor fees that will be mentioned on another slide later as well. Let's see here. I was just checking to see if Amanda's here. Has she been able to join us yet, Tracy? Okay. I am going to go ahead and roll through some of the HUD regulatory requirements then, and I'm going to do this on a very overarching, superficial level. But if you have any questions, please feel free to ask us during the question and answer portion, or you can ask us online later as well. Also wanted to point out a couple of details that are in the chat. Tracy's helping me there to include some basic information, so please feel free to have a look at some of that information there if you have not done that already. In regard to HUD regulatory requirements, this is not an all-exhaustive list, but you can see some of the regulatory requirements that we have to comply with, some of which have changed in the last couple of years, including Davis-Bacon and related acts for labor standards. If you have ever had to fill out payrolls before, Davis-Bacon is the reason that you've had to fill them out for federal and state government work. Section 3, that regulation has changed also in the last several years. And then you can see the other list of lots of regulatory compliance that we have to comply with. So Haywood County will have these requirements that they have to respond to us about, and in doing so, they'll have to require you to help them meet those requirements so that they can comply with the details that they need to do. Additional grant requirements about the awarded projects, there are federal, state, and local laws. All of that stuff makes it sound super fun and exciting to do this work with us. But we hope that you will still be willing to go through the red tape to create projects that are really beneficial to the community and to the developers and the contractors that are working on these projects. Record retention, fiscal management, monitoring, and requiring to submit documentation in a timely manner is all very, very important when you're doing these types of government-involved projects. There are also affordability requirements on the different types of projects. You can see that here for rental and homeownership in something called the consolidated notice. There is additional changes to the affordability requirements that HUD has for CDBG DR funds. So it's actually changed also in the last couple of years, and they've increased some of the affordability requirements. So you can see the chart here, but essentially now it's based on the amount of money that is applied per unit, and it tells you how long you have to comply with affordability periods. Now, these are minimum affordability requirements, and Haywood County reserves the right to enforce longer affordability requirements if they want to do that, but that has to be decided at the county level. So pay attention to the chart, know what amount of money you're planning on layering into the project, and that will determine how long the units have to stay affordable. And you can see, just to point this out because it's the one that's not based on just the amount of layering, it says newer construction or acquisition of newly constructed housing is 20 years. Green building standards. As you know, we're interested in resilient housing because of the type of disaster recovery work that we're doing, but HUD also requires green building standards to be used. And there are different types of programs, so it will be required that one of these programs or something else approved by HUD would be complied with, and those standards to be met on any of the projects that are built. Relocation, not sure if any of you have had to deal with relocation before. It can be very complex. But if there are existing dwelling units on the land that are being lived in, there are a lot of regulations that go with that. And essentially, it's to keep the government from removing anyone from their living space or their workspace without some sort of compensation for that. And we have to comply with the Uniform Relocation Act and INCOR's Uniform Relocation Act policy manual. So you would just, if you think that you're going to be displacing anyone from their a place of business that they're owning or a place that they're living, then please get up with us early in the process so that we can help walk you through the notice requirements and all the things that have to be done for relocating individuals or businesses. I will reference the Residential Anti-Displacement and Relocation Assistance Plan. So there is a specific plan also that would have to be created if you were displacing anyone from either of those situations that I described. Davis-Bacon and related acts, talked about that briefly a minute ago, but essentially construction projects that are greater than $2,000. I don't know what construction project you can do for less than $2,000 anymore, but in whole or in part with federal funds, then you would have to comply with this, and it requires weekly payrolls to be submitted, right? Usually to a general contractor, and to Haywood County for review of those payrolls to make sure that the wage rates for specific categories of labor were being met. And we have to review all of that documentation to make sure it's people are being paid what they're supposed to be paid, essentially. The Department of Labor requires us to do that, and for our subrecipients to do that as well. Section 3, really it's about getting low and moderate income people back to work, and HUD has a big initiative to make sure that Section 3 is complied with. So you have to comply with Section 3 when there's a project involving new construction, rehab, or demo of housing, if the project exceeds $200,000 from our funds. CDBG-DR is under the CPD portion of HUD, so it would be triggered for any projects over $200,000, and then we can help you make sure that you're complying with that. But there are certain businesses that are certified Section 3 businesses, certain types of workers that would be certified, and they can help meet those goals. And there are qualitative and quantitative goals that have to be met for that we can have a whole separate presentation about for all the details, but just know that we can help you comply with that. But to be attuned to that, if you're going to be using different types of workers on and need to hire new people, particularly for any work that you might be doing with these funds. And then INCOR monitors all of these things. Minority-owned and women-owned business enterprises, the same thing. We have goals that we have to meet at INCOR. Those goals we make aware our subrecipients and their contractors to help comply with those goals for minority and women-owned businesses. We also encourage people to be mindful of the historically underutilized businesses. The hub through the Department of Administration can give you additional resources for finding contractors, laborers, and that sort of thing as well. Environmental review is a really big topic and a very important one for anyone that would like to utilize these funds through the Affordable Housing Development Fund. There's a reference here to 24, the Code of Federal Regulation is what CFR stands for, Part 58. And this is for the environmental review level that has to be done for the majority of these projects. There are a few exceptions, but generally there's going to be a very large environmental review that has to be done. And you have to be very careful about the types of activities that you make on your project before the environmental review is completed. The contingencies that I mentioned earlier that have to be removed before you get the okay to spend the HUD grant dollars are mainly stopped by the what we call the authority to use grant funds, and that's the thing that stops the contingency and the notice to proceed and everything from happening. So you have to make sure that you don't do what they call choice limiting actions that you can see next to the beware there. Don't make any choice limiting actions because that can actually jeopardize the funding availability for the project. So if you want to go and clear the site while you're waiting to find out if you get funded, don't do that. Ask first. If you think you're going to go and buy the land that you had the option on before you get the environmental approval, don't do that. Ask first. We're probably going to tell you to wait. Haywood County is probably going to tell you to wait until you get your authority to use grant funds after your environmental review is done. So there are some things that logically you would think you'd be able to move forward with on a project that are actually not okay from HUD's standpoint for you to move forward with on a project before you get that environmental clearance in order to spend HUD funds to do what you want to do. To Tracy's point that she put in the chat, we are told that environmental reviews can be completed in a 90-day period. We have found from personal and professional experience that they generally take a bit longer than that. So would plan on 90 to 120 days easy to complete that project process for just the environmental review. So you have a frame of reference in your mind if you have not had to go through that lovely process before. Haywood County is also doing something that we think to be pretty smart. They have an environmental consultant that is working with them that they've used appropriate procurement channels to get so that you can work with them to help get these things done and get them done timely, because frankly, we've worked with some environmental consultants that have massively delayed the process on other projects, and we're trying to help prevent that from happening to the agencies that are working or the entities that are working in this process. There's a list there of things not to do before you have your authority to use grant funds and have gone through the environmental review process. Just really encourage you to pay attention to that so that you don't accidentally hurt yourself in funding eligibility unknowingly. Okay, talking about program a little bit. Program income is defined as income in excess of $35,000 in a calendar year generated from the use of CDBG-DR funds. If the money on your project is used to pay expenses, that's not program income because it's not income in excess of $35,000. HUD requires INCOR to specify how we're using the program income and whether it can be retained. So we're working with Haywood County to make sure that all that is very clear. And we can share additional information about that too if you're expecting program income to be derived from the activities that you're doing. Tracy, is there anything else we should mention about program income to this group?
I can't think of anything, Michelle. Thank you.
Okay. And then there is if you have program income, if any of that is being generated, just want to make sure that you know that regardless, however it's handled, it will have to be reported back to INCOR through Haywood County because we still have reporting requirements that we have to do. This is just really more about documentation. If you'd like to read more about program income, then you can find that here at 24 CFR 570-489. Duplication of benefits. This is really very simplistically put where we look at the sources and uses for the project and make sure that none of the other sources are providing funding that would make our HUD dollars unnecessary for the project. We also can't participate in supplanting, which means that if another source was going to provide money for the project and they say, well, we'll keep our money and the HUD money can fill in that gap, we're not supposed to do that either, since there was technically another source that could have been funding the activity. Okay, and then we have to work with Haywood County essentially to make sure that the duplication of benefit documentation is there and present. So if we ask you for information, Haywood County's asking you for information, making sure that you're updating them as you go along. If you're selected, then that's the reason that they're asking for that documentation so we can stay up to date. on the duplication of benefits. Okay, so just some items to remember. We're coming to the end of the general presentation. The $3.5 million max award was determined by Haywood County to try and make it so that the pot of money that they have, which is approximately $10 million, is available and can be used in a wise way to fund affordable housing development activity. The developer fees through this program are capped at 15%. The general contractor fees are capped at 20% of hard construction costs. And then just a reminder that the construction must meet green and resilient building standards, which you can check back on the different programs that are eligible for that standard in the slide earlier in the presentation. One of the other things that's in the evaluation criteria involves resilient building as well, which is how you are dealing with future storms and how can housing be made to be sturdier, stronger, and more thoughtful to the fact that our environment is changing, weather patterns are changing, and flood risk is more substantial. Wind risk can be more substantial in North Carolina as well. Okay. That brings us to the question portion of the presentation. You can see for NCORE, Tracy and myself are the primary points of contact. If you have any questions after the presentation or would like individual technical assistance when you're trying to put your projects together. And then Hannah White is the primary contact for those types of questions for Haywood County, if you have those. And of course, David and Patricia are offering to be available as well as additional resources for you. So with that being said, that's the end of the overarching information session presentation, but we have left available time for anyone that may have questions about the information that we've shared today. And you're welcome to put those in the chat, or you should have the availability to unmute yourself and ask those questions live. And if we don't have an answer in the moment, we'll be happy to research those things and get back to you, or we can take your question now. So a question in the chat, if you're able to print the information on the slides. Yeah, absolutely. When I send it out, it'll just be in PowerPoint format, and you should be able to just print the slides without any problem as either notes or slides under your printer options. And the recording usually takes 24 to 48 hours to get on the website. So you can find that information there. We'll say by Monday, just to give Sarah, who's also on the call from our comms department, a little bit of breathing room to get it there once we give her the information. Thanks, Sarah.
Hey, Michelle, this is David Maurer with Tightlands. Nice presentation.
Thank you.
I got a question about just the timing, and I'm probably not qualified enough to talk about the 9% awards and the timing of commitments and all of that, but I saw that your award announcements are in July, knowing that the final apps are due in May. How do developers, like, if you can get an award and they use that for gap funding, but then they don't get the award in August? Have you guys thought through or sought advice on how that can actually work with a 9% deal?
Yeah, Tracy, do you want to field that question? I think you've had to talk to a couple of developers about exactly that scenario in the past. So we'll talk about that first.
Yes, thank you. And David, that's a great question. We because of the timetable that we committed to with the county, and we did not envision that we could totally sync up the availability of these dollars with the QAP timetable used by North Carolina Housing Finance Agency. But basically in line with projects that have already received a tax credit allocation, or ones that might be considering a 4% project rather than a 9%. We heard on from Scott Farmer at the conference last week that the QAP process for 2024, the 4% program, is not expected to be competitive for 2024 at least, and so there would still be an opportunity to hopefully opportunity to put a proposal in with their October window to hopefully get lined up if these funds were awarded to go with. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you very much.
And I guess, just to kind of add to that this would be another thing that would be helpful for the letter of interest process if there was a project that was contemplating 9%, to include that information in an LOI in case there is anything that Haywood County can take into consideration in regard to that process as well. Probably makes sense to do that. Thanks for the question. Any other questions that we can field for you as you're thinking about projects? While you're thinking for just another minute, I guess we can give a little bit of background on the types of projects that we've funded in the past through the Affordable Housing Development Fund. This wasn't for Haywood County, and we have changed a few things about the program to meet the needs of Haywood County specifically. But the Affordable Housing Development Fund has funded 9% tax credit deals through NCHFA directly. We have funded 4% tax credit deals with local government, municipality, agencies, and we've provided gap funding for those projects. And we have just made another round of funding announcement Monday. Anyway, this week. Yeah. For agencies that were still through the local governments, but we have one single family homeownership development project that's actually with the tribal government, and we have other multifamily new construction projects that we're working with through the most recent round of funding. So some with local government, some with NCHFA, some 9%, some 4%, some not tax credits at all. So we've seen different versions of capital stacks that we've made work out for different types of projects, if that helps you kind of contemplate what your project might look like.
And we know that when it comes to single family homeownership development, there's going to be a larger gap in funding than a project that is using tax credits to create affordable multifamily, for example. And generally, a single family project may require layered subsidy to make it work. And because it is just a little more complicated and doesn't have an existing template out there like what's afforded by the North Carolina Housing Finance Agency's QAP process, we thought it warranted a separate session for those that are interested in talking about single-family homeownership development, so that we can explain to everyone the different types of subsidies that have worked in other states that are using these funds this way, and just give you a little more information on how those transactions might work.
Okay. Any last minute questions? All right, that's a lot of information to share in less than an hour. So we really appreciate your patience and taking the time out of your very busy schedules to come and listen to this presentation and to contemplate helping Haywood County fill some of the gap for their affordable housing needs right now. So thank you so much for that. We'll share the information as soon as it's available from Microsoft after the presentation. Thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to talking to you in the near future. Hope you have a great rest of your afternoon. Bye.
Thank you all.